In this week's blog on leadership, I've decided to focus on beliefs and fallacies about leadership. And as I was thinking about that, 3 beliefs stood out for me. Leaders have the answers. Leaders are right all the time, and leaders are strong all the time. Now, obviously, as soon as I say that and put those words out, I can hear a part of my brain going, what's the exception? Nothing is all the time. But despite that, I think it's great to look at these and see, is there a part of you or is there a part of me that is bought into any one of those? And as I reflected on that, I could really see how I had bought into that, and that the roots of my buying into those limiting beliefs stemmed from my childhood. I grew up in a family that really enjoyed discussion and debating, and there was lots of opportunity for that with one qualifier. You had to back up what you were saying. There had to be evidence or proof or data. And so very early I learned that making statements without any backup wasn't going to go over well. And so that started me being more cautious. So I started to back away from making bold statements. But of course that didn't last long. It was not long before my natural spontaneity and my desire to just express myself was back. But I really could feel that there was a price. I felt more vulnerable, more concerned about whether I would be picked on or focused on if I didn't have all the answers, didn't have a backup. When I got to school, there were more layers that were added to that whole perspective of needing to be right, needing to know what you were talking about, and so on. And so gradually that became part of what I believed was true, and I layered that on, or I projected, I guess we really would say, that on to leaders. That they were the ones that knew. They had the answers, they were right, they were strong all the time. And what I realized underneath for myself, and maybe you'll identify with this, is that there was a fear underneath of being vulnerable, of being wrong, of being looking silly, and maybe even a fear of not being valued or loved. And when that fear is underneath there, it's going to affect our ability and our willingness to step forward. Now, some of you may remember that I did a blog on the psychological needs that Dr. William Glasser identified. The needs of love and belonging, power, freedom, and fun, which is tied to learning. And these needs are genetic, and they're part of how we're wired as human beings. And all of our behavior is an attempt to meet these needs. And so one of the reasons I think they're so important is they do help us understand ourselves and other people's behavior. And so as I was thinking about these beliefs, leaders have the answers. They're right. They're strong. I could see how that would tie in to the needs of power, of belonging, and so on. And so understanding that what really was driving me and my fear was really attached to, what if I'm not safe? What if my needs for belonging or for value were threatened? And so that made me more cautious, more nervous of being in the limelight. I was happier supporting others to be in the limelight. And some of you will know what that's like. Now, I want to read to you from a book by a woman named Dee Henley. She wrote a book called The Secret of Sovereignty: Women Choosing Leadership at Work and in Life. And I don't think this applies just to women, but Dee's book was focused on women. And I'd like to read to you what she says are the 7 deadly traps that women leaders can fall into. See what resonates for you. One of the traps, being one of the boys. Second, martyrdom. I'll do it myself. 3, having no voice and no choice. 4, waiting for rescue. 5 is peace at any price. 6 is hurry, hurry, hurry. And 7 is self-protection. What she's offering is that when a leader opts for any of these strategies or behaviors, they're a trap. They're limiting. They're coming from a place of vulnerability that does not serve. It's really actually more of a place of victim. And so I thought it was wonderful that she identified those, because if you think about those, how many of these things are tied to the needs I was just talking about? The need, being one of the boys, fitting in and belonging. Martyrdom, I'll do it myself. The need for power. Having no voice and no choice, all about freedom. So you can see how powerfully the needs are in the background. And if our needs are threatened, we're going to do behaviors to protect ourselves or defend ourselves. All right, so how do we shift a limiting belief? We recognize that believing something is limiting us, it's holding us back, stopping us from being all that we could be. What do we do about that? Well, there's many options with limiting beliefs. There's strategies to address them. We have a program that addresses them. But today I'd like to talk about an experience I had that addressed a limiting belief in a very powerful way. I was at a presentation by a woman named Lynn Twist, and she wrote the book, The Soul of Money. Fabulous book. And so there I was in the audience, and it was a packed house, and Lynn walked up to the front of the room with a Kleenex box. And I immediately thought that she had a cold. Well, she went on to immediately explain that she did not have a cold, that the Kleenex was there because she cries when she presents, which in and of itself was a radical thought to me. I did not think presenters would really show up crying through their presentation. That didn't match my idea of strength. But she showed me something different. She said the reason she cries is because the people that had taught her so much about money and generosity and the flow of life, their stories were so powerful that even when she would retell them, and she'd retold these stories many times, every time they touched her heart and she would cry. So she grabbed a clump of Kleenex and she started into the stories, and sure enough, we were all crying. But what I was witnessing that was transformative was a powerful, smart, strong person crying in her presentation. And I realized there that vulnerability is a key in leadership. Can we open our hearts? Can we be more vulnerable and lead? Well, building on that, Brené Brown has written a book, Daring Greatly. I've mentioned this one before. It's a groundbreaking book. It's outstanding. Many of you have seen her TED Talks. And she talks about the link between vulnerability and transformation, the direct link. That what we need to find within ourselves is the courage to be vulnerable, because that opens the door to transformative experiences, things that could happen we would never, ever be able to imagine. And so the power of vulnerability is emerging, and in fact, it seems to be in direct opposition to those first two beliefs, that leaders know or have all the answers, and that they're always sure and confident and right. The vulnerability says no, that's not true. So this week, I invite you to think about, is there a way, are there places in your life that you could be more creative, more courageous in stepping forward in leadership by opening up, sharing more, being more curious? So I hope you have a great week. I've so appreciated your comments. There's lots coming in, and I will be responding to those. Please, let's keep the conversation going about what is true leadership, what is authentic, what really inspires us. And this week, your opportunity is to look at how vulnerability can link to leadership. Thanks.